we get the benefit of some experience. Tonight I have a former Minister of State for Interior and that of Defense at the time, Mr. Demola Seriki, joins us from our Abuja studio. Also, Mr. Nwagwu. He is a civil society person. He's the Executive Director of Partners for Electoral Reforms. Both of them will be sharing their experience tonight on the program. Let's begin with Mr. Demola Seriki, former Minister of State for Interior, and also he served as a former Minister of State for Defense as well. What we saw as a circular from the office of the SGF is that something that is new, because the SGF quoted portions of the law which we'll dissect in the coming minutes about the procedure of removal. We've seen a lot of heads of agencies that have been removed in the last months or years under the Buhari government. I understand that Mr. Nwagwu is there with us. Mr. Nwagwu, give us a sense of what do you think is happening at that level of government in Nigeria?
Well, Shehu, I think that what we're seeing is perhaps lack of coordination, if you like, and where people begin to think that they are some sort of island to themselves, especially ministers and boards. And this is without regard to extant rules and regulations that govern both appointments and exit from public service. You recall that often political appointees get their letters of appointment from the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. And then they get sack letters from ministers. And in the particular case of Ministry of Power that you refer to, we have seen that that particular minister seemed to be now notorious, if you permit the use of that word, in sacking, suspending, apparently without recourse to processes and procedures that guide this. And that's why you see the SGF doing what he should be doing and being the clearinghouse of government. It's coming very clearly to say, hey, you don't do this. And my expectation is that ministers will ordinarily, even from the point of their appointments, and members of boards should ordinarily be conversant with these extant rules and regulations. First and foremost, the issue around fair hearing, which is very important. Making sure that there's an investigative panel so that you don't just come and rubbish, people, and then eventually in the Ministry of Power, 2 particular cases have happened where that minister made appointment, sacked people, and the president reversed them. That of the bulk, I think is the bulk purchase company, and the other one where those appointments were reversed, those sacks were reversed by the president. So I don't think that the SGF is coming very strong to say, hey, you need to abide by the rules and regulations that guide how we operate in public service, and anything outside of that, of course, is arbitrary, and we need to clean our house. That's what I see happening right now.
Nwagwu, I suspect that you have seen the said circular and the memo from the office of the SGF, which basically highlighted the procedure, disciplinary action that is supposed to be followed under the Establishment Act and the principles guiding the public service under this chapter 3 and 16. Those are some of the portions that have been stated. So when some of these people were removed, you recall what happened with the SEC, former SEC DG. The case went to court, and afterwards the court asked him to be reinstated. We've seen what has happened in the past few weeks also, where in fact a sitting minister and a head of agency were being seen to be having spat on Twitter. What does this say about you mentioned coordination, but again, if all of these removals have happened in the past, could they be said to be illegal removers?
Yeah, so you can follow the process, for instance, with that of NECO. The Minister of Education followed the process. If you remember, the Professor Nwagwu was suspended 2 years ago. And if you'd followed that process, you will see that even his letter of sack was very clear that the president was acting on an investigative panel. But what we have seen, and the Minister of Power is not alone on this, you saw the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs also doing exactly this not long ago. You've seen the Minister of Power constantly with the data of the TCN. There is no clear evidence that the proper procedures for disengaging public servants were taken into consideration. And if you know, one of the reasons the public service is attractive to a lot of people is because of the rigor, of even the engagement, the termination. You don't just terminate people. There has to be a query. There has to be a response. Interdicting people publicly has the tendency and potential to ruin the integrity and character of some of the people you just threw out like that. So what has happened in this government is that we have seen that people go straight to the president without recourse to where they get their letters of appointment. And the office of the SGF is for me, the clearinghouse. And so that disregard, that disrespect for processes and going straight to the president, and the president eventually having to come back and investigate by himself, which actually the office of the CGF is supposed to have cleared out, being the one that is responsible for coordinating MDAs in government. So these ministers and boards are acting arbitrarily. It happened even in News Agency of Nigeria, in Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Now, on 2 occasions, the Minister of Power has been, clearly told that he does not have the powers to do what he's doing.
So,
the woman that eventually left for the UN, yes.
Yeah. So the question is that, does this memo or this situation that has arisen, does it reduce the power or influence of the minister in the Buhari cabinet?
No, it does not. It does not remove the powers. It simply tells you to go through the process. There's a process. There is no hurry. If somebody is guilty, okay, and you set up a panel for the person to face a panel, there's a probe, and the outcome of the probe is indicting, it will be obvious to everybody. But the point is that what you are seeing is that the minister wakes up and sacks or suspends and then comes back to explain. I was giving you the instance of the case in NECO, for instance. 2 years ago, only last week did we see the appointment of a replacement for Professor Nwagwu in Professor Obioma. Okay? Meaning that within that period of 2 years, the issues that led to that suspension had been laid to rest. And the president can clearly say, look, you have been found guilty. And if you are not, the Minister of Education is also a minister. So he could also wake up and suspend people, but he goes through the process. The power to do that is resident, but it is not without restraint, it is not without regulation.
But again, Mr. Ezenwa, for those who think that this is some kind of power tussle at the highest places in the federal government, would you say the SDF or some other power blocks are asserting themselves, perhaps thinking that they've been sidelined in the scheme of things, based on what some critics are already implying?
Well, I just think that there are processes. If for instance, you know the powers that are resident in a particular place, and you decide to short circuit that process, the person occupying that office is not making any new issues. If you look at the SDF is calling attention to existing rules and regulations, procedures through a circular that is even an inheritance from earlier traditions. It is not something that he invented or any other person invented. And these ministers, in the process of this ritual of a retreat that happens at the appointment of boards and ministers, they should be apprised of these procedures, of these circulars, so that they are conversant with it and they know their limitations and their powers. What we see most often than not is that people like to be territorial. People like to claim their territories and sometimes even exercise powers that they do not have. So if there is a regulator, and I think in this particular case, the Office of the Secretary to the Government is the regulator, is the one who must make sure that there is stability, that there is, cohesion, and there is cooperation within government. That I think is the role of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and to remind people who wield these powers through these government circulars that you have to abide and obey these regulations.
All right, let's take a break, and when we return, we will talk more about this situation that the PDP, the opposition party, says is a hostility in the presidency, asking that the Federal Executive Council should be disbanded. Has it gotten to that point? We hear from a former minister in the federal cabinet. That's after the break, everyone. Join us again.